When I was in high school, our town school had a gang called the Cobras, who would spray paint cobras on school property, write it on desks, and even in the bathrooms, basically everywhere. It was dumb, and many of the students had a good idea who was a part of this gang, but the teachers didn't. The principal would call down groups for photos in the yearbook, siblings, sports teams, drama club, and so on over the announcements. One day, they called down the Cobras for a school photo for the yearbook to try and figure out who they were. They ended up catching almost half the students who were defacing school property because they showed up for the group photo. Brilliant on the principal's part. How stupid do you have to be to walk into your own arrest? Senior year, we received our yearbooks the week of graduation. And to our surprise, the full-page action shot for men's soccer showcased our player jumping up and lifting one leg to trap and control the ball. Unfortunately, he forgot to wear underwear that game, and the tip of his private part was fully visible, sticking out of the bottom of his shorts. Our school had over 4,000 students, and we were required to bring our yearbooks into security to have the picture sharpened over, or we wouldn't be allowed to walk at graduation. We had a teacher who was super nice. She was out for 3 days, and we didn't question it much until she wasn't there again for the next week. Turns out, her husband murdered her quite brutally. It was so quiet the next few months for that class. None of us really knew how to process it. He's in prison now, and her kids are living with their grandparents last I heard. It was a heartbreaking situation that cast a shadow over the rest of the school year. Someone once called in a bomb threat to my middle school and elementary school. Instead of evacuating both buildings, we were in lockdown for 3 hours, and they condensed all of us in the middle school. Later, we were evacuated to the high school, which was only a few hundred feet away, and we stayed there for hours because our parents couldn't reach us. They even took all our phones because they didn't want us giving out any information. And I swear there were about 700 suburban moms simultaneously having heart attacks trying to get to their kids. We learned later that the same threat had been called into almost every school in the area. It was a diversion for a bank robbery nearby. During senior year, another shocking incident occurred. One of our classmates brought a dangerously hot sauce called the bomb to school, 1.5 million Scoville units, far hotter than anything normal humans should consume. During lunch, at least 30 students tried it, some showing off and quickly realizing they had severely underestimated the heat. Vomiting, panic, and chaos erupted across the cafeteria as multiple students were sent to the nurse or even sent home. Even I tried a small dime-sized portion, and I couldn't concentrate on anything except chugging milk. The principal finally intervened over the loudspeaker, and the friend who brought the sauce faced serious consequences, though the entire cafeteria was still reeling from the madness. Pranks at school were common, especially on the last day of senior year. One group filled the principal's office with balloons and glitter while another saran-wrapped the main hallway entrance. The principal warned that anyone caught participating in pranks would not walk at graduation, but chaos still ensued when the science teacher's laser experiment created so much smoke that a fire alarm went off, turning the entire wing of the school into a smoky haze. It was a day filled with wild antics, but also a reminder that even small experiments could get out of hand in a packed high school. Some students were extreme in their behavior. One kid rode his dirt bike recklessly in front of the school, popping wheelies and tragically wiped out, hitting his head on a light pole and dying on the spot. Seniors were also required to complete a project, and one very popular student used his project as an opportunity to stage a shocking act. He set up a camera in the parking lot, gathered a crowd of students, and then tragically took his own life before anyone could react. It was devastating, and the entire school struggled to process the tragedy. Even the library, normally a place of calm, could become chaotic. The school had an impressive collection of taxidermy, some over 100 years old, but one student smashed a window and fed a badger, turning a quiet institution into a scene of absurdity. There were smaller incidents too, students being detained for minor misunderstandings, unusual pranks in the bathrooms, and countless times when things escalated from harmless to dangerous. Despite all this chaos, there were moments of kindness and bravery. Students and teachers trying to do right amidst the madness. One of the most bizarre events involved students groping each other Back in the 70s, a girl in 7th grade started grabbing boys inappropriately, and soon the boys retaliated. What began as shocking behavior spiraled into a strange, widespread pattern, with some students going along and others reporting it to teachers. The principal had to call a massive assembly to address the situation, emphasizing accountability. Though everyone secretly knew who started it all, it was a mix of humor, confusion, and outrage, showing how quickly high school dynamics could spiral out of control. Physical altercations weren't uncommon either. One student punched a school cop, who retaliated by pepper spraying the entire hallway, including dozens of students heading to class. Several students ended up in the hospital, and the event became a legendary story of chaos and overreaction. Lockdowns were also surprisingly frequent. In elementary school, a supposed rabid fox on the field turned out to be a fat orange cat, and students were stuck in lockdown, highlighting the sometimes absurd lengths schools went to for safety. Pranks and mischief had a long history at our schools. Some students tried to call in bomb threats from payphones during finals week in the 90s, thinking it would be harmless fun. Back then, the consequences were mild, suspension for a few days. Today, such actions would likely lead to arrests, SWAT interventions, and serious repercussions. Similarly, fire alarms were a common target for pranksters. One year, the principal pleaded for the alarms to stop, and the school even refitted them with ink that sprays anyone who pulls it. A student eventually got caught pulling 10 alarms, spending Christmas in juvenile hall, a lesson in how pranks could escalate dangerously. There were also students who were weird but harmless, known for odd behavior that didn't directly hurt anyone. One particularly unusual student broke windows, wandered naked in practice rooms, or harassed classmates. Yet he was kind to some, including me. On the last day of school, he surprised everyone by showing up in a dress and makeup, introducing a new name, and living authentically in a way that completely changed how people saw him. Moments like these were rare but powerful reminders of individuality and courage. Amidst high school chaos, high school was also a stage for truly unexpected accidents and tragedies. One day, a student decided to ditch class and ride his dirt bike aggressively in front of the school, popping wheelies in the parking lot while classes were still in session. Unfortunately, he wiped out, hitting his head on a light pole and dying instantly. The event shocked everyone, a grim reminder that life could change in an instant and that reckless behavior had real consequences. Similarly, senior projects, usually meant to be fun and creative, sometimes ended in heartbreaking tragedy. One well-liked senior planned his project meticulously, gathering friends in the student parking lot to film it, only to take his own life in front of everyone. His death left a lasting impression on the school community, emphasizing that we never truly know the struggles others face and highlighting the importance of empathy and kindness. The school's library had a massive taxidermy collection that was impressive but also occasionally became part of student mischief. One student smashed a window to release a badger, creating chaos, while another incident involved someone throwing a fork that stuck in a girl's head. Even small acts of mischief could escalate into serious accidents, showing how quickly things could spiral out of control. There were also countless pranks that balanced humor with chaos. During the last day of school, students filled the principal's office with balloons and glitter, saran wrapped the main hallway, and caused smoke hazards during science experiments. While some pranks were harmless, others created panic or safety risks, teaching students lessons about boundaries and consequences. Even seemingly minor rules caused major disputes. At a private school, phones were forbidden, yet the vice principal urgently needed one during class. 10 students ended up with detention and confiscated phones, illustrating how quickly authority could clash with students' lives. And sometimes, unusual behavior went unnoticed or escalated due to inadequate oversight. In theater classes, students threatening suicide and harm had to wait until they acted because authorities claimed there was no history, demonstrating a frightening gap in how schools handled mental health crises. Thankfully, no one died in that situation, but it left a lingering impression on those involved. High school also had moments of chaos fueled by pranks and experiments. Students brought cabbages to start fights. Someone attempted multiple bomb threats, and fire alarms were pulled repeatedly. Even weird kids who were harmlessly eccentric became sources of fascination and occasional trouble. These incidents highlighted the unpredictability of school life, how creativity, mischief, and chaos coexisted in the same hallways, producing stories that students would recount for years. High school was also full of bizarre and shocking incidents that left everyone talking for weeks. Some students' actions seemed to defy logic entirely, like the kid who created a homemade hot sauce called Da Bomb, which registered 1.5 million Scoville units. During lunch, he let over 30 students try it, and many immediately started vomiting, some even needing to go home or see the nurse. The chaos that ensued was only calmed when the principal intervened, exasperated but somewhat impressed by the audacity. Similarly, pranks on the last day of school escalated in ways that showed both creativity and danger. Balloons and glitter filled offices. Hallways were saran-wrapped. Smoke from science experiments spread through classrooms, and students' over-the-top antics created temporary havoc. The boundary between fun and recklessness was thin, and sometimes it tipped too far. Accidents were frequent and, sadly, occasionally fatal. A student riding his dirt bike outside the school wiped out, striking his head fatally on a pole, while senior projects, intended to showcase creativity, could become tragic. One student, setting up a project in the parking lot, ended his life in front of a crowd, leaving everyone shocked and reflective about the unseen struggles of others. Moments like these reminded students that life was fragile and often unpredictable. At the same time, the library and other spaces often became arenas for chaos. Students smashed windows, let loose animals, or engaged in outrageous antics that left janitors scrambling to clean up and staff shaking their heads in disbelief. Even small rule enforcement sometimes caused tension. At a private school, students faced detention simply because the vice principal needed a phone urgently, showing how rigid policies could create absurd situations. Theater students who exhibited troubling behavior were often ignored until something drastic happened, demonstrating how gaps in oversight could have serious consequences. Meanwhile, harmless eccentric students, the so-called weird kids, brought color and unpredictability to everyday life. Whether by breaking rules, staging pranks, or performing harmless but chaotic acts, high school life was a whirlwind of pranks, accidents, and shocking events that tested students' resilience. Fire alarms, bomb threats, and smoke experiments kept everyone on edge, while random acts of chaos, cabbage fights, taxidermy mishaps, and stolen items reminded students that unpredictability was part of the daily rhythm. Despite the danger and the stress, these experiences became stories retold in laughter, disbelief, or horror long after graduation. The mix of humor, tragedy, and chaos painted a vivid picture of high school as an environment where anything could happen, and students learned quickly how to navigate both the absurd and the serious. High school was a constant stage for bizarre, unforgettable, and sometimes outrageous events. Some students pushed the boundaries in ways that seemed impossible, whether through elaborate pranks, extreme dares, or just sheer unpredictability. One memorable story involved a student bringing an absurdly hot sauce into the cafeteria, daring classmates to try it. The results were chaotic, vomiting, panic, and multiple trips to the nurse as students learned firsthand how dangerous a few drops of concentrated heat could be. Even the most daring and confident students were humbled by the sheer intensity, and the principal's eventual announcement brought both relief and amusement, signaling the limits of what the administration could tolerate. Other days brought moments that were shocking in a completely different sense. Seniors carried out pranks that transformed the school into a labyrinth of balloons, glitter, and saran wrap. Smoke-filled classrooms from science experiments created temporary panic, and the combination of cleverness and recklessness created a sense of constant suspense. Students, teachers, and staff were frequently caught off guard, sometimes laughing at the absurdity, sometimes stressed by the disruption. These pranks, often harmless at heart, reflected a desire for fun and creativity, a way to leave a lasting mark before graduation. Tragedy, too, left its mark on the student body. Accidents like a fatal dirt bike crash in front of the school reminded everyone of the fragility of life and the consequences of risky behavior. Other tragedies were more personal, like a student who took his life during a senior project, leaving classmates shocked and grieving. These events served as stark reminders that high school was more than academics or social status. It was a place where emotions ran high, and students had to navigate real-life challenges alongside growing up. The school's culture was defined by extremes: humor and horror, mischief and seriousness, chaos and order. Even the weird or misunderstood students found ways to leave their mark, whether through unexpected acts of kindness or bizarre antics. From cabbage fights in the science corridor to unexplained incidents involving bizarre items or pranks, every day was unpredictable. Teachers, administrators, and students alike had to adapt quickly, learning patience, creativity, and sometimes resilience in the face of utter absurdity. In the end, high school was a microcosm of life itself, a mix of laughter, fear, chaos, and beauty. It was a place where memories were made, through both joyful and difficult experiences, where students learned lessons far beyond the classroom. From pranks to tragedies, each incident shaped personalities, friendships, and perspectives, leaving an indelible mark that would last long after the final bell rang. High school wasn't just a series of classes and exams. It was an immersive experience in the unpredictable, chaotic, and extraordinary journey of growing up. High school was full of stories that were equal parts hilarious, shocking, and sometimes tragic. Students learned early that anything could happen at any time, from wild pranks to completely unexpected emergencies. There were moments when entire hallways were filled with chaos, like when a cabbage fight erupted in the science corridor, leaving leaves and laughter everywhere, or when smoke from a science experiment made the school temporarily unrecognizable. Teachers, administrators, and students alike had to navigate these unpredictable days, often improvising solutions on the spot. And somehow life carried on. Some events, however, were far more serious and sobering. Accidents and tragedies reminded everyone that high school was not only about fun and mischief. Students faced heartbreaking moments, like a peer losing their life in a dirt bike accident right in front of the school, or another student tragically taking their own life during a senior project. These events shook the community and forced students to confront reality in ways that left lasting impressions. They learned that life could change in an instant, and that kindness, empathy, and understanding were crucial in navigating both everyday drama and profound loss. High school also highlighted the extreme personalities and unexpected transformations among students. Some who were once considered weird or outliers revealed surprising talents, courage, or growth. Students experimented with self-expression, whether through daring pranks, bold fashion choices, or asserting their individuality in unique ways. These moments, while sometimes chaotic, helped foster creativity, resilience, and confidence. Even the most notorious troublemakers often had moments of unexpected insight or kindness, reminding everyone that people were complex and multifaceted. Ultimately, high school was a stage for learning about life beyond textbooks. It was a place where laughter, mischief, and chaos coexisted with pain, grief, and personal growth. The stories, funny, strange, or tragic, created memories that students carried into adulthood. Every prank, every accident, every surprising transformation contributed to the lessons learned about resilience, empathy, and the unpredictability of life. High school wasn't just about grades or rules. It was an immersive, unforgettable journey that shaped who students became and how they approached the world. Looking back, the years were a whirlwind of unforgettable experiences, moments of joy, shock, confusion, and growth. Each incident, whether a wild prank, a dangerous stunt, or a tragic event, left an imprint on everyone involved. They taught lessons about friendship, responsibility, compassion, and the complexity of human behavior. High school, with all its unpredictability, was more than just a place. It was a formative chapter that shaped perspectives, values, and memories, leaving an indelible mark on all who passed through its halls.